Hey, this is Brighter Rays. We're looking at Genesis chapter 30 in this study called The Place of God. And today we're looking at verses 22 through 24. And today's study is called The Lord Remembers. Now we're going to hear some words that we've studied before in Genesis with the idea that God listens and God remembers. We must remember that the words remembered and listened to can mean several different things. And when they're applied to God, we must be careful where we tread. We have to be careful with using these words and applying them to God. We must keep in mind that when God allowed His characteristics to be explained through human speech and language, He was condescending or coming down to our level. If we assume that we can capture God's essence through words or encapsulate God's thoughts by using English, or any language for that matter, we are in danger of assuming that God is finite, like our universe. He's not. He exists outside of our reality, outside of time, outside of space. Words derive meaning from time and space. And so language will never be able to capture who God is completely. Our language, the way we communicate, is based on time and space. It doesn't go outside time and space. So God using human language and allowing humans to use language to describe Him is really a condescension. Because human language can't comprehensively understand God. God allows us to use language to describe Him for our benefit because in some real way we're getting to know God. But to assume we can figure out God using language, that's foolishness. We're worse off than any ant, trying to explain what the earth is like. We're all worse off than that. The ant is at least in a finite world trying to understand and explain a finite earth. We're a finite human trying to explain an infinite being who exists outside of our reality. So if we think we're going to use words to be able to explain God, and we think like, oh, we got God figured out. Yep. Nope, sorry. Can't do it. You can't do it. Now, language and God using the language and God giving us the words and understanding of His Word, that is real. It's not fake. It's not unimportant either. He gave us that understanding, He gave us language, He gave us words so that we could understand Him. And to a certain extent, we'll never fully comprehend Him, but it's not just a throwaway kind of thing. We are getting closer to knowing God through language. It's true. So, when we listen, we use our physical ears, right? God does not have ears. He doesn't have physical ears. So, we listen to learn something about our surroundings, right? That's why we listen. We hear things. We understand certain things. We can figure out distance with our hearing. We can do a lot of things with our hearing, with being able to listen to things. We listen to things to gather information too. But God does not need to learn and transcends all things. So when God listens to something, it's not because He's doing like what we do. Now, when we remember, it is because we lost recall of an idea or a memory. God has and always will know everything. There's nothing that God does not know. There's no way for God to not know everything. So, listening and remembering really take on a whole different level when we apply them to God. Now we use that language and it gives us kind of a sense of what God is doing and what He's thinking. But really, it's just a shadow. The Bible says here that God remembers and listens to Rachel. That means that God knows Rachel and her situation and her desire, and He has chosen to act on her behalf. Now, when did He choose to act on that? That's a whole other time issue. But God has chosen to place His favor on her at a specific time in history. That's what's happening. That's what it's talking about here. It's not because, God's like, I hear what you're saying. And oh yeah, I remember, oh yeah, Rachel, I almost forgot about Rachel. That's not what it's saying here. And when we listen and remember, it means that God has chosen to act on her behalf in a specific time in history. So we need to be careful that we don't incorporate, anthropomorphize God, bring him down to our human level, and assume that that's right. We can use those human terms. We can use anthropomorphisms, and it's not evil, it's not wrong. But for us to assume that that's exactly how God is, then we are assuming something that the Bible never allows us to do. So, hopefully that makes sense. I know it's kind of a deep, kind of philosophical, but that's where we need to go with this, because we're talking about a God who exists outside of reality. To assume that language is encapsulating everything about him, or even a quality of him, or how he's acting, or how he acts within time, language I don't think can express the ideas of that. So we can get a little bit there, we can get a little shadowy bit of that, but we'll never be able to understand it fully. Language can't explain it fully. So let's take a look how God subtracts through addition, though, in the story here. Finally, at the end of all this craziness, this baby wrestling competition, and the mistreatment of all these people. I mean, Jacob was mistreated. Jacob mistreated other people. Rachel and Leah are mistreating Zilpah and Bilhah and all this kind of stuff. After all this crazy nonsense, Rachel finally has a child. And she turns and says, God did this. In fact, she not only uses the Hebrew word for God, but also invokes the divine name. May the Lord, may Yahweh, may Jehovah add to me another son, she says. She says that God took away her reproach by giving her Joseph. Much of the reproach that she might have been experiencing was her own doing, but now no one could say that she was childless, that she was barren. That stigma, that cultural stigma couldn't happen now, because she was able to have her own child from her own body. So by having her son Joseph and saying, may the Lord add to me another son, she could be suggesting two different things here, both of which are fitting. Is her desire for her children so great that even though she has a son, she can barely thank God for him because she wants another? Is that what she's saying? I have Joseph, but God, add me another one? Is she just like, yeah, I got one now, I want more? Is that what she's saying? Or is she thanking God and praising his grace? This is just the beginning. This is just a down payment on what else God will do. I have Joseph, but God will give me more. Both are possible answers. And I think both could be answered in the birth of Benjamin and her subsequent death. I'll let you grapple with which one it is. Which one do you think it is? Is it that she's saying, yeah, I got one child, but I want more? Or is she saying, I have a child, and he'll add me one more? I don't know. It's interesting to think about. We're not told which way she's taking it, and both of them have been, both ways have been explained in commentaries as to what Rachel was thinking. Because we're just guessing. We're not sure, because we're not told exactly. It could be taken in both ways. So, yeah, you can figure that one out on your own. Well, that's the story. That is what we're looked at this week. And so in our next lesson, we'll take a look at the conclusion of the story and try to see how does this apply to our lives. You probably could figure out some good stuff along the way. Hopefully I've pointed you in the right direction already this week. But we want to stop and think a little bit more about how we can see the lessons learned here and how they work in our lives.